I know it's been a while for me since I've done a video, but I'm back. It's Benavidez versus Plant fight week. Let's chop it up.
They hear him. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier.
Hey, what's up with it, fam? It's Hot Boxing Minute, your favorite pharmaceutical engineer turned boxing analyst, back at you with the uncut realness, because real is the only way I'm serving it to you. It's been a few weeks. I've been busy trying to learn videography and production on the production end of making content. But I'm back, and hopefully I maintain a regular schedule unless I go out of town. It's David Benavidez versus Caleb Plant fight week. This weekend, out there at the MGM Grand Garden in Las Vegas, PBC Showtime, they've been putting it on for the town. It's going down this Saturday, March 25th. And without further ado, I got to break down what's going on with this event. This is one of those fights that has been anticipated for years. I think a lot of us wish it would have happened 2017, 2018, 2019, when they were both champions. I believe Caleb had the IBF at one point. David Benavidez had the WBC. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that one. I'm not looking up anything. I just decided to make this video on the fly. As far as stats, there really isn't much differentiating them physically. One is 26. That's David Benavidez. Caleb Plant is 30 years old. They're both 6 foot tall. David Benavidez it says here he's 6'2". It says Caleb Plant is 6'1". I don't know. David Benavidez looks a lot taller than that in person. Maybe he is 6'2". I don't know. They have roughly the same reach. They're going to weigh in at 168 pounds. Caleb Plant has that one loss on his record, that loss to Canelo. And you got David Benavidez. He is undefeated. 23 of those 26 wins on David Benavidez's. Listen, if there's one thing we can say about David Benavidez, based on his resume thus far in his career, is he's got stopping power. Of his 26 wins on his unblemished record, 23 of those have come by way of stoppage. Now, it isn't amongst the most top tier of competition, unfortunately, but it has been great for some highlight reel stoppages. Now, Caleb Plant, on the other hand, 22-1. He only has 13 knockouts, 56.52%. Now, Caleb Plant, I think, more traditionally is seen. Actually, let me get this words correctly. Caleb Plant is definitely more seen as a boxer as opposed to David Benavidez, who's seen as a puncher. But we have seen Caleb Plant, especially in his last fight against Anthony Durrell, he got that one-hitter quitter, so he's shown that if he catches you lacking, he will knock you out. So it makes it a little bit more intriguing than, say, we had not seen Caleb Plant knock out Anthony Durrell the way he did. So I think that definitely piques people's interest as far as not just seeing someone like Caleb Plant as soft-fisted compared to David Benavidez, clearly. Now, David Benavidez and Caleb Plant do share that common opponent in Anthony Durrell. Oddly enough, they both got the stoppage in the 9th round. Caleb Plant had that one-hitter quitter. He hit him from the bottom and then hit him up top with the hook and put his lights out. David Benavidez got the stoppage because the cut was just bleeding too much. So either way, they both got the stoppage over the same guy in the same round. Can we infer much from what we know about those fights? Honestly, I don't think so. It's hard to play the triangle theory game based on mutually common opponents with fighters. So I don't look at that very much for direction on this fight. Now, we know David Benavidez as an offensive juggernaut. I think that's the part that appeals to him to most fans. He doesn't have the most impressive resume, unfortunately. He did win his title, a vacant title, against Ronald Gavril in a couple of back-to-back fights. He does have wins over Porky Medina. He has the win over Anthony Durrell. I don't know if that's something you can write home to mom about. So it's weird. I don't know if you would call it a hype per se, but David Benavidez has definitely built himself a reputation as being an offensive juggernaut, but not against the best names. You can't call him a killer's killer when the list of names include guys like Kyron Davis, an undersized David Lemieux, Ronald Ellis, no knock to Ronald Ellis or any of those guys are solid competitors, but they're not exactly champion after champion after champion that David Benavidez has been getting the stoppage. Technically, we haven't seen him against a real A-lister with considerable firepower or at the very least boxing skills like Caleb Plant has. I guess you could maybe count Anthony Durrell, but I think even when David Benavidez got to Anthony Durrell was a little bit long in the tooth, to be honest. Him and his brother Andre, both amateur standouts for Team USA, but not something that you would say, oh, he beat Anthony Durrell. Like, this is the honest truth. Caleb Plant is the same way. Caleb Plant and David Benavidez both carry that same problem as far as resume of not exactly having the most stellar names. I mean, you got David Lemieux, Ronald Ellis, Kyron Davis, and then, with Caleb Plant on his resume, you got Jose Usatagi, that Anthony Durrell, the common opponent, Feigenbutz. Feigenbutz, what kind of name is that? So it isn't exactly like they've been both going through murderers their whole career. So this is a very interesting matchup for them. David Benavidez is definitely an offensive juggernaut. David Benavidez loves to apply relentless pressure. He doesn't do what you call cutesy or artistic boxing. He's a puncher. And he's just going to come at you, and likely the offense is going to be so overwhelming that there's nothing his opponents can end up doing. Eventually, they break down. If they don't have very good footwork, which most of them do not have exceptional footwork, eventually Benavidez gets to them and just makes it impossible and smothers them with offense. And Caleb Plant is slightly different. Caleb Plant likes to use the full length of the ring. He moves laterally. He cuts angles. But in the past, his fault has been, according to some of his critics, that, he doesn't have the heaviest punch. Now, Caleb Plant, as of his last fight with Anthony Durrell, showed the whole world under Steve Breadman Edwards that now all of a sudden he's someone you have to consider as having possible knockout power because of the way he did Anthony Durrell and pretty much buried him alive right there in the center of the ring. That was bonkers. But it's an interesting matchup. Can David Benavidez's relentless flow of opposition stop Caleb Plant and his movement? And we've already seen Caleb Plant against the top guys like Canelo. And I think, honestly, when you compare the resume of Caleb Plant and David Benavidez, the only one striking thing that stands out is Caleb Plant has lost to Canelo, but that just shows that Caleb Plant has been here. He's been here on the biggest, brightest stages, and David Benavidez cannot say the same thing. Will David Benavidez cave under the pressure, or will he rise to the occasion? Or will Caleb Plant be as cool as a cucumber and rise even higher to the occasion? You tell me. Now, I believe how this fight plays out is, it's hard because I can see us now. When it comes to Caleb Plant and David Benavidez, I can see a scenario where both guys win. I can see Caleb Plant gassing out late, which he has shown at times in his previous fights, and David taking advantage of it with offense down the later stretches of the fight. But then again, I can also see a situation where Caleb Plant boxes circles around David Benavidez because David Benavidez is heavy on the front foot and isn't exactly the most fleet-footed fighter. So whose game plan is going to be better enforced on the night when they fight? That's who we find out wins. And just based on the fact that Caleb Plant has fought Canelo Alvarez, I'm going to go out there and say it. I believe Caleb Plant is going to win this fight by decision. I don't know if it's going to be a UD or a split or a majority, but I think Caleb Plant survives the David Benavidez experience and hands David Benavidez his first loss. That's just what I think is going to happen. Maybe David Benavidez proves me wrong. I would love it if he does. I don't really have I don't have a horse in this race to begin with. I'm just saying, when it comes down to 50-50 fighters, I'm always going to go on the side of the fighter I perceive to have more raw boxing skills. And as far as just the ability to box, I think it isn't really debatable that Caleb Plant has more finite kind of boxing abilities. You know what I mean? Now, that card isn't without its undercards. The card is relatively stacked. You got Jesus Ramos against Joey Spencer, two fun prospects you want to watch. Jesus Ramos has kind of built himself up into being, no offense, an elite level gatekeeper. No disrespect to Jesus Ramos, but Joey Spencer, thus far in his career, has not fought anybody of considerable name. It would be a great fight for both of them to win. You got Cody Crowley against Abel Ramos. That's a fun one too. You want to keep an eye out for that one. I'm gonna go into this one, which I think is gonna be the other card on that fight that everyone's really interested in, is Chris Colbert against Jose Rayo Valenzuela. Now, aside from the main event, which is David Benavidez against Caleb Plant, I think this is the fight that most other regular boxing fans are going to be most tuned into, or at least most interested in. Now, Chris Colbert and Rayo Valenzuela, they will be fighting on that David Benavidez versus Caleb Plant card, and both Chris Colbert and Jose Valenzuela have something to prove in this one, and you could almost say it's a sink or swim fight for both of them. Chris Colbert, little B-Hop, he had that, amazing video about his amateur rise, and he was doing really well, very charismatic, very well-spoken, was winning all of his fights, wasn't really the most heavy-handed puncher, but he was very charismatic and had great, technical boxing skills. He got to Hector Luis Garcia and just got served up ridiculously. And that experience hopefully humbled him. It's clear he has the tools and the capabilities to have a high ceiling. Can the shock of him losing to Hector Luis Garcia help, quell that ego of his? Because, man, I like little B-Hop. I like Chris Colbert, but he got it. If you're going to be in this fight game and you're going to have an ego, you at least better have crazy, ridiculous skills to back it up. And Hector Luis Garcia definitely showed Chris Colbert that there's a couple of things he could refine on in his boxing approach. Jose Rayo Valenzuela, he was building up a bit of hype himself. Let's get to their records since we're here. Chris Colbert is 16-1. Jose Valenzuela is 12-1. So there isn't a lot of separation there in their records. Chris Colbert's knockout percentage is 35.29. Rayo Valenzuela is 61.54. The reach is roughly the same. Their heights, Rayo Valenzuela is a couple inches taller. So physically, there isn't much degrees of separation between Chris Colbert and Rayo. Rayo Valenzuela, he got beat up pretty nasty by Edwin de los Santos, the wrath of the Dominicans. Edwin de los Santos shocked the world by beating up Rayo Valenzuela, and Hector Luis Garcia defeated Chris Colbert. And this was when we were first starting to really understand just how dangerous these Dominican fighters were, because now we've got Carlos Adames, and Hector Luis Garcia, even though he just lost to Tank, still holds a title in the 130-pound weight division. So there's a lot of Dominicans, a lot of talent in the Dominican islands over there for some reason. They're like the new Puerto Rico, but doing their own thing. So as far as that fight, gosh, I am going to go with Chris Colbert on that one to win by decision. I think Chris Colbert got a little bit ahead of himself, but I do believe him to be the more technically adept fighter than Rayo Valenzuela. But Rayo Valenzuela has hella pop and he's a great counterpuncher, but I think Chris Colbert will not do what he did against Hector Luis Garcia. He tried to dog it out with Hector Luis Garcia, and that's the wrong guy to try to play dog with, because clearly he got outdogged by a guy with more pop than he thought he was going to have. I think Chris Colbert is going to take that loss against Hector Luis Garcia and use it and learn from it and get a win over Rayo Valenzuela. That's what I think is going to happen. Boxing community, how do you think the fight between David Benavidez and Caleb Plant plays out? How do you think the fight between Chris Colbert and Rayo Valenzuela plays out? Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Hit that like button if you haven't already done so. And don't forget to follow your boy. This is Hot Boxing Minute, the future of boxing analysis on YouTube and TikTok. Peace.